Hey everybody, welcome back to the Comic Keystone. I am your host, Maz Fitter, and I start, as I always do, by saying it's been a while. This time a bit longer, but I blame the lack of good superhero content for my personal taste instead of, just my own inconsistency. My last episode was for Superman, the movie that came out with James Gunn. We've had some good shows since then. X-Men 97 Season 2 just came out recently. By the time this episode airs, Season 2 is not finished yet. I did do an episode on the podcast for X-Men 97 Season 1. We've had What If Season 3 that came out. Daredevil Born Again came out. But I haven't had a movie since Superman that I've really enjoyed to the point where I wanted to make an episode of it. And I think the closest that I got was probably some Avatar content recently, The Last Airbender, which I might make an episode in the future about. But if you're here, you already know what this episode is about. Spider-Man, Brand New Day. And I think this one was the one that was worth me making an episode for just because I appreciated it. It was so much fun to watch. And there's a ton in this movie that perhaps the average moviegoer might not understand, and it's just fun for me to kind of dive into those things. So let's get straight into it. I like to break it down by segment. Segment one is called the recap. So the spoiler-free version, the recap of the movie. So if you're listening right now, this will not have spoilers thus far. Spider-Man Brand New Day is about Peter Parker after No Way Home, and he has been forgotten. So his identity as Peter Parker is completely gone. No one knows who Peter Parker is, and everybody is familiar with just Spider-Man. So he travels as he does throughout New York, saving people, and he has this reputation of saving everybody in New York. And I think what makes this movie work is it combines his Spider-Man identity with the problems that he's facing as Peter Parker, even though nobody knows who Peter Parker is. So he's obviously had friends in the past, he had MJ in the past, and they've all forgotten him. But he lives with the trauma of not having forgotten anybody. And so going through this movie, it's really his journey of trying to rediscover Peter Parker, just like everybody else who've also forgotten him. And that's the spoiler-free version. The spoiler version, I'll keep it short. So if you're listening right now and you haven't seen the film yet, just a warning for some spoilers for the next until the ending of this segment. So Spider-Man Brand New Day, like we said, is about the aftermath of No Way Home. But in this case, the spoiler version is that he will meet people along the way. So he's met characters like Punisher, and the one character who no one knew was going to be in the film, everybody thought was going to be in the film, and ended up being so, was Jean Grey. So that was a big surprise. That Sadie Sink was playing Jean Grey, part of one of the characters of the X-Men. And throughout this film, it's his journey back to being with Peter Parker. Not just him, but also his friends, like we mentioned. So along the way, he gets to play around with the pre-X-Man now, Jean Grey in the film. He works with Punisher. He fights the Hulk along the way, but Jean Grey essentially is your good guy who's a bad guy and then eventually turns into a good guy again. And the reason being is because the DODC, the Department of Damage Control, they kidnap, and this is what they do, is they're looking for, they don't really call them mutants, but, people with abilities and anybody that's a threat. So obviously you're going to see at some point in this scene where someone who's mind hopping from person to person is taken as a potential threat. And so Jean's sister was that person that was kidnapped. And that's the whole, motivation behind why Jean does what she does. By the end of the film, obviously she is saved and kind of brought back by Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Spider-Man throughout the film, he also goes on his own journey of discovering himself, not just his identity, but also his, I think there was a scene that was deleted, which was actually cut. So he's sitting in a classroom and he's not able to describe what's happening to himself. And one of the students of the classroom says, I think I call it like spider puberty, perhaps. I think that's what they said, but it was cut. So he goes through this like transformation in the film where he's getting stronger and more spider-like in a sense, where he's actually physically gaining these abilities of a spider, which is organic web, among other things as well. So that is segment one, the recap of Spider-Man, and I'd rather you watch the film than listen to me perform the actual recap. So go watch the film. But segment two, I'll dive into, which is my favorite scenes. The first one is the one where I was convinced that Zendaya and Tom are incredible actors. I don't know if I was the only one who was convinced of this scene that took place. So Jean has the ability to control people and mind hop into, other people. And there's this scene where she's threatening Spider-Man, threatening Peter, that she's going to go and mess with MJ. And so he saves her, and eventually, he opens up to her, and
this audio was created with async.com.
He opens up to her, and the entire time I was totally convinced that she's like figuring out who he is just based on, she's explaining like from memories, like I remember being saved by Spider-Man, but not Peter Parker. And now all of a sudden, like, you're here and show me your face and all of that. The entire time I'm like, oh my God, this is like, I believe it. Like, she's figuring it out. And then in the end, again, is this just me? Like, it was a full twist where MJ is controlling, or Jean Grey is controlling MJ, and it turns into this like super dark twist where, she kissed Spider-Man, kissed Peter Parker, but she was pretending to be MJ the whole time. She was pretending to be MJ the whole time. So that I thought it was a really great scene just because I was fooled. I did not believe that MJ was doing that, was being controlled by Jean Grey. So that was one of my favorite scenes in the film. The other part was the second favorite scene that I have is, I wouldn't say it's a scene, but overall, Frank Castle, the Punisher, was such a great supporting character. And I think it's funny because he has the opposite personality of Tony Stark, like as a mentor. Tony, although he comes off as soft and kind, especially in his like initial meeting with Peter Parker and his aunt. Think about this. I mean, Tony manipulates Peter to fight for him, right? Like, hey, you've got, this scholarship, this money, and, he probably has inheritance from Tony Stark at this point too. Who knows? But I felt like their relationship, although he was soft, he started it from a place of like manipulating Peter. Frank, on the opposite end, is really hard towards him, is rough towards him, is like that big brother that kind of, doesn't bully him, but just tries to like rough him around. But Frank is actually trying to free him. Like, Frank is trying to get Spider-Man to uncover Peter the entire time and just be a kid. Like, he knows that he's a kid. So I thought I think that part was what was most interesting to me, is the dynamic between Tony as a mentor and Frank as a mentor. We'll move on to segment 3, which is, the interesting facts. First one is Frank Castle and Spider-Man. They have shared history. What in the world happened on Staten Island? So the entire time they're bickering back and forth about Spider-Man saving Frank, and he's holding it over his head, and he reminds him of it pretty often. But what this kind of reminded me of was the two actors, actually. So Tom Holland and John Bernthal, they have known each other for a long time. They were actually the ones who were responsible for the other person auditioning and getting the role of the part that they play. So Tom Holland encouraged John to audition for Frank Castle, Punisher, and even filmed his audition tape for him as they sent it in, and vice versa. Frank was the one John Bernthal was the one who encouraged Tom Holland to do the same, and he filmed his Spider-Man audition tape and then sent it in. So I think it's like a case of also like in real life, this happened in Ireland. This was like where they actually filmed this, these audition tapes for each other, not Staten Island. But I think the idea here was that they're saving each other. They're getting each other their jobs, and the characters that they're so well known for, and so they're just kind of going back and forth, and they have this bickering of like, hey, I helped you do this, well, I helped you do that, how long are you going to hold this over my head? I think it's just a fun play on that, perhaps. So I thought that was the first thing that was kind of funny to me, but the fact here being that they helped each other get the jobs that they're well known for, that kind of led to perhaps their bickering back and forth. The other part here is Jean Grey. So we've spoken about this before, but she's obviously part of the X-Men, one of the original X-Men. This was, kept hidden, similar to Andrew Garfield in Spider-Man No Way Home. So everybody's been asking Andrew at that time, are you in Spider-Man? Like, have you filmed anything? And he went on record, he was on video saying, I was just kind of playing around and trying to just save it for the theater, right? I don't want people to be spoiled ahead of time. And I think that's the part of the magic is you show up to the theater, and this is what happened in my theater, was when Peter reads out that, the name of this girl is Jean Grey, everybody, there's like a gasp in the theater, like, I can't believe this is actually happening. Jean Grey, part of the X-Men, who have not appeared at all in the MCU thus far, is in Spider-Man and like a lead character. So I think that was really awesome. Obviously, Jean being pre-X-Men era here, but by the end, who knows where she headed on that bus? Maybe to a school that she's heard of? I don't know. But that was the second interesting fact to me. The third one here is the end credit scene. So Spider-Man off-world, right? So you have Ned's Spider-Man tracker. It's an app. The way it works is people have to ping on the app or, kind of mention that like Spider-Man's been sighted. So the idea here is that as they see him throughout New York, you have these pings that kind of show Spider-Man movements. And at the end credit scene, you see Spider-Man in Queens, but then all of a sudden it zooms out to the point where another Spider-Man was sighted off-world, and it looks like it's in space. So there's a couple implications here. Number one is that it could mean this Spider-Man was seen off-world, and perhaps this is because he takes place in the next couple movies. So you have Doomsday and you have Secret Wars, and what happens in, by the end of the next film or what happens in the following film, we're not sure. But it could be that there's this new reality, a new world that's created, and that's where Spider-Man was sighted. That's the first sort of possible implication. The second one is that this could mean someone is using, like someone has to be, pinging this location of Spider-Man. So someone is using this app, but maybe it's not this Spider-Man. It's not Tom Holland's Peter Parker. It is maybe Tobey Maguire's. So someone is using this tracker for a different Spider-Man, because we already saw that our Spider-Man was on this Earth and there's another Spider-Man sighting somewhere out there. So what does it mean exactly? We don't know. I think it is a tease for the next film, if not the next two at least. And what it means, we'll figure it out. We'll see what happens. I think it's a cool tease. From there, the fourth interesting fact was Hulk's the Savage Hulk. I don't want to say Hulk because Hulk has appeared before as Smart Hulk. Savage Hulk.
This audio was created with async.com.
Because Hulk has appeared before as Smart Hulk. Savage Hulk came back for the first time since the beginning of Avengers Infinity War. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. The fact that we haven't had Savage Hulk since then. And we know he was peak. He was awesome in Thor's last movie. Well, not last movie because that was Love and Thunder. But before that, I think when Hulk and Thor teamed up was, I think, like the best time that we've seen Hulk in his form, because he was savage. He was in it for the entire film, and that was like for the first time probably since The Incredible Hulk. So that is a crazy fact to me that we haven't seen Savage Hulk since then. And he was in his complete savage form. Like it was awesome. He was rampaging, like, noted that it was just in a single building, and there's these like gigantic cinder blocks that are like holding him back and stuff. And you have Spider-Man and the Punisher, fighting against him. Jean Grey is letting him loose completely. So awesome moments. That's the fourth interesting fact that I have there. The last one is the entirety of the film. Tom Holland and his journey as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. In this film, it seemed like a mix of Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and Andrew Spider-Man. So the reason I say that is because in No Way Home, they talk about how Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, he said, like, after Gwen Stacy died, stopped pulling my punches. Like, I just became full Spider-Man mode, 100%. I didn't have time for Peter Parker. That's kind of what happens in this, in what we learn, but he hasn't like pulled his punches, but he's basically fully Spider-Man because everybody's forgotten Peter Parker. And on the flip side, you have Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, who his first appearance is as Peter Parker in No Way Home, as opposed to Andrew Garfield's was as Spider-Man. So he's more embraced the Peter Parker side. And I think that's where, again, like the mix here is he's taken bits and pieces from both. What like fully didn't make sense to me from a plot perspective is that like they were warning him of these things, which eventually happened to him, like becoming Spider-Man 100%, leaving behind Peter Parker. But I think it's just part of his journey, obviously, because he lost people. Like he lost his Aunt May, he lost his friends. Everybody's forgotten him. The Avengers have forgotten him. Like everybody just knows Spider-Man, and he has this like weight on his shoulder of, I'm the one who's protecting New York. So I think it was a natural course, but also like from that perspective of like he was warned about it too. So I was a little bit mixed about that. So my final sort of interesting fact here is the story that was kind of woven in from No Way Home and from the other Spider-Man that kind of developed Spider-Man and Peter Parker in this movie in Brand New Day. So that's pretty much the last of the interesting facts. And to sum it all up, to end us off here, it's a short episode, but I think everybody needs to watch this. My rating for this, when I walked out of the theater, I said it was a 9.5. I gave it a 9.5. I really loved it. I had a lot of fun in it. I think there were some parts where it was a little bit slow, but I actually liked it a little more because if you take into account like something like Fantastic Four, the new movie that came out, what they try to do is they try to bring everybody up to speed. Like, what have they been up to? And they did this sort of montage of, defeating all these villains at the beginning of the film, and it was very quick. That kind of happened in this in Brand New Day. It was done a little bit differently, and I liked how it was done differently. It wasn't just like a quick montage. It was like it was presented as like present day, like this is still what's happening. So that was a little bit different. Again, like there were some slow parts, but I mean a 9.5. Like it was given a 98% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think a 90 or a 95 like by critics. So I mean, it's an incredible film. It's really fun and great references. There's so much that happens in this. Like there's a bunch of YouTube videos I'm sure you'll find. My personal favorite channel is New Rockstars. I think they have great content, and you'll see like all these broken down Easter eggs. Like, that's not what my channel is meant for. I'm here just to talk. I have fun talking about it. So if you're interested in more, visit those channels, New Rockstars on YouTube. I think they definitely already have, like, I'm pretty sure they had these videos out like 2 hours after the release date, just to give everybody a chance. Yes, that chance is 2 hours after release date to watch the film. So with that, I appreciate everybody listening. Hit the like and subscribe buttons. YouTube, I'm on, podcasts as well, available obviously on different platforms, Apple, Spotify, and appreciate you guys. And there is a form that you'll find where I can get your feedback. If you have things to talk about, if you want certain points mentioned, if you want me to cover something in the future, like in a future episode, fill out the form and let me know what you think, because it'd be fun to have those discussion points, shout people out and get your ideas out there too. So appreciate all your time. Thanks. And I don't know when, but hopefully something good comes out. Maybe it'll be doomsday, but until then, see you in the next one.
This audio was created with async.com.